for joining us today, and welcome! Today's video is going to be a little bit different. This is because I, like many, am locked down due to COVID-19, and I'm unable to get out and explore as regularly as I would like to. So I'll be diving into a back catalog of footage that I've either not yet edited, or am just now completing research on. Some of this, yes, is stuff from the cutting room floor, so it may be a little bit more shaky, but nonetheless, I'm excited to revisit Ouray, Colorado with you today. Well, or at least visit it in spirit. More specifically, I'd like to visit a ghost town that's about 10 miles away, Ironton, Colorado. I've gotten a lot of really good questions and comments about Ironton. Majority of the questions revolve around the town's final resident, Milton Larson. Milton, or Milt as he was known to his friends, was best known for his appearance on the show I've Got a Secret in 1961, where his secret was he was the entire population of the town Ironton, Colorado. One question I found particularly interesting came from a viewer who no longer lives in Colorado. However, on their visits out here, they have unsuccessfully tried to find Milton's home several times. This is because they're actually descendants of Milton Larson. Now, in 2019, I recorded nearly every square inch of this town in an effort to preserve it for historical record. And it's something I've been meaning to do for a very long time, is to look through my footage and try to help this family find the location of Milton's home. A lot of people point to the picture shown on I've Got a Secret as being Milton Larson's home and possibly being off of US Highway 550, or the $1 Million Highway. And a lot of people confuse the picture shown in the television show with this property, which is off of the $1 Million Highway and was in the Larson family. However, this is not their home. The property is a very big part of Ironton's history and continues to be an evolving part of US history. This property changed hands a lot before it ended up in the Larsons' lap. It was first owned in 1888 when W.C. Davis and G.C. McGee purchased the Ida L and Dauntless mining claims. By 1893, David sold his interest in these and other claims to W.F. Abrams of San Diego, California. McGee kept his interests until selling to A.G. Berner in 1910. Beginning in 1917, Berner fell behind on his tax payments. Eventually, in 1933, Charles L. Larson of Denver purchased the Ida L and Dauntless mines for only $200, and even back then, that was a very good deal. That year, Charles moved with his two sons, Henry and Milton, to the town of Ironton. They were some of the last few prospectors in the town. This became evident to the Larsons when in 1920, only 3 years after purchasing the mine, the Ironton post office closed. The next year, the railway stopped all services to Ironton. This wasn't the best of fates for a mine that's trying to get itself off the ground and ship large quantities of ore out of it. However, trucking had came a long way since the original creation of the town Ironton, and they could rely on trucks to get some ore out of here. Despite the closure of the post office, lack of rail service, and dwindling population, Charles and his sons continued to build on their property for over 4 years. During this time, they constructed a small flotation mill, a bunkhouse, a blacksmith shop, and a snow shed over the mine adit, or mine opening. Many people believe that this building is the Larson family home, and people did stay here. However, it was not their home. This was the bunkhouse, where anybody who was leasing space within their mine or a mining leasee would have stayed, or anybody who was directly employed by the Larson family. It had a secondary purpose as the office, so if you wanted to sign up for service, this is where you would do it. And you see on the floor here where it's been patched up, that's because it burned. There was a wrought iron stove there at one point in time. You can see the chimney that would have been above it here. And sometimes you have to replace the wood because it does begin to burn over time. And this window has a gorgeous view out of it. Let me adjust the iris a little for you to see. Can you imagine that being your view? And I don't believe it's a window. Actually, looking here, it looks to have been like a loading bay door at some time. So this may have had a third purpose as a depot, or at least it had the capability to pull a truck up to it. It had a really nice wood ceiling at one point in time. However, I don't see any sort of opening cut to get into it or ladder to get up to it. So it seems like they didn't make much use of this space, which seems like a waste considering that this was a bunkhouse. perhaps the wood on the ceiling comes from a project that happened in 2005 when Great Outdoors Colorado put a new roof on the property. However, I doubt this. If you compare the wood on, let's say, the floor and the walls here, it looks just as old as the wood on the ceiling. I think they just never used the attic, and really seems like an oversight to me. That said, I'd like to take a second to say, don't do this. Absolutely nobody gives a that Hannah Allen was here in 2019. With that out of the way, back to the search for the Larson family home. The mine eventually had a 180-foot tunnel and a two-compartmented shaft. In 1937, the Larsons shipped out 25 tons of concentrated ore at a rate of $100 per ton. This $2,500 doesn't sound like a lot of money in today's currency, but with inflation, it would have felt like they had $44,000. The very same year that the mine began to turn a profit, Charles Larson passed away, leaving behind his two sons, Milton and Harry, to run the mine. During that time, they became locally known as the Larson Brothers. What we're looking at here is actually an Environmental Protection Agency monitoring station. And what they're monitoring is this mine adit, or mine opening. And if you look at the water trickling out, you can see it's got this kind of greenish red hue to it. And that's because it's full of things that really do belong underground. Things like mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium. These are poisonous heavy metals. And there's also other things in here, like zinc or iron. And that's what's making this red discoloration that we see in the ground. However, this has nothing to do with the fact we're on Red Mountain. It's actually pollution. This is an unfortunate legacy of this mine and many others. However, if we were to follow the contaminated water across the $1 Million Highway, we will begin to see a little bit more of the Larson property that's overgrown. And so, to reiterate, just be very careful around this water. Don't let your dogs drink it because you don't know what's in it at the end of the day. But with that out of the way, this piece of the property is butting up against what's called the Colorado Boy Trail. And it looks like it was some sort of a auto garage or maybe a blacksmith. It could have actually been both. At one point in time, it could have been the blacksmith and then repurposed into an auto garage. Unfortunately, I lost most of the footage of that building. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the heart of Ironton and talk a little bit more about the story of the Larson brothers. You see, even though their father left with a profitable mine, the Larson brothers were not rich men. They were in debt, which limited any further development on their property. They struggled to get their mine off the ground for years until a man named Kenneth Gerard offered to buy out their partner in 1940. This opened up a world of possibility for the brothers. By 1951, Gerard started a diamond drilling program. He wanted to use the flotation mine once more, however, this never came to be. In fact, very few people worked the mine. Nobody wanted to lease it, and this continued this way until the mid-60s. Despite the fact that the mine was just limping along, it was enough to get both families on a stable footing. So much so that in the late 1950s, the nearby Beaver and Belfast mines owed back taxes, and Mr. Gerard and the Larson brothers took the opportunity to buy the mines in an effort to expand their operation. But this never came to be. Milton and Harry Larson operated their original mine for an additional 9 years. People who visited the brothers said no one left without sharing a bowl of soup or chili. They were said to have only mined enough minerals to get what they needed. They traded their findings in town for basic supplies and would trundle back up the mountain once a month. The pair shared this humble existence until Henry's death in 1959. Milton continued to live in Ironton alone, a fact that he is most well known for. In 1964, he was interviewed by local newspapers about this fact and eventually given an all-expenses-paid trip to New York City, where he appeared on the game show I mentioned earlier, I've Got a Secret. Fortunately, this footage has been preserved, and I was able to use this to find what I believe is the location of Milton Larson's home. So I'm really happy not only to share this with you, just for fun, but also the family members that are interested in seeing this, and I have shared with them the GPS location, so if they ever feel like taking a bit of a hike, they can visit it themselves. Before we get to the house and why I feel it's the house, let's take a quick look at a segment from the show here.
Tell me something. Living all alone in Ironton, as the only citizen in the town, what do you do for food and supplies?
I have to send to the nearest town for us.
Do you drive or what?
Drive.
Drive, I see. Tell me, when Ironton was a whole place, what was its industry?
Mining.
Mining. I have a picture here of Ironton in 1890 when the population was 1,800 people. And here is a picture of it today when its population is 1 people. And this is the house, Mr. Larson's house, right there.
Now, the photo is grainy, yes, but we can still get a lot of information from it. For instance, the mountain peaks. Those are stagnant. They haven't gone anywhere for some time, and I don't think they intend to. And so we can use those to understand what the orientation of the camera was. We can also see that the house has one broad side with no windows, which of the houses that still stand in Ironton, this is unique. One of the most helpful features of this photograph were these 3 trees, because even with overgrowth, these 3 trees' orientation to the mountain peaks will remain the same. Based on these facts, we can comfortably say that the camera was facing north. We can also comfortably say that the property we looked at early in this video is not the Larson home. The biggest indicator of all is the Colorado Boy Trail. You see, this trail wasn't always a trail. It was once the main road in and out of Ironton. And it was a long road, and it had a decent amount of outskirts on it, such as this home, which I believe to be the home of Milton and Harry Larson. The reason the Colorado Boy is one of the biggest indicators that this is the house is because the photograph shows an unpaved road, and that photograph was taken between 1961 and 1964. And if you consider that the $1 Million Highway was paved completely by 1935, we can say with certainty that this house, or Milton's house, was not on the $1 Million Highway. Furthermore, this house has 2 broad sides with no windows, as we saw depicted in the picture, leading me to believe that we have the house. But, to be certain, I found a photo that I had taken from a very similar position and orientation as the old photo from the game show. In this photo, we can see that the mountain peaks line up nearly identically, but again, the most telling thing for me is these 3 trees. Their orientation to the house and to the peaks is nearly the same. And I do plan to revisit so we can get a perfect before and after shot to really drive this point home. But I'm firmly convinced that this is where Milton Larson spent the last of his days as the final citizen of Ironton, Colorado, and the honorary mayor. This may have seemed as if it was a lonely existence, and I'm sure at times it was. However, he was reported to have been in good spirits and of sound mind all the way till his death. He was known for his detailed and entertaining stories. In fact, he would entertain the occasional tourists with his own version of Ironton history and folklore. Comments on my original video about the history of Ironton talk about how kind he was to small children who came to visit. In fact, one such comment references him allowing children to go into his mine to pick a little bit of galena ore as a memento. Given what we've learned about the contents of his mine, this probably wasn't the best of ideas, but times were different. Milton was able to live out the rest of his days as a local celebrity of sorts and had fun talking to people who came through. So maybe it wasn't all bad for Mr. Larson, but this is how he spent out the rest of his days. With Milton gone, the property ownership and mining claim went to the Gerard family. The property remained in the family for 41 years, and like the rest of Ironton, it fell into abandonment and ruin. Thankfully, in 2005, Ouray County purchased the mining claim from the Gerard family with a grant from Great Outdoors Colorado. Today, the Larson Brothers mine and its claim are an important historic site and are listed as a Ouray County historic landmark. Charles, Milt, and Harry Larson lived and died on this land. It was an important part of their lives, and it was almost lost to time. Thanks to the money generated by Great Outdoors Colorado, we'll be able to experience their home for years to come. If you would like to have a look at the episode of I Have a Secret that features Milton Larson, please take a look at the description below. Also, if you want to have a look at the original Ironton video, where I dive into the history of Ironton, Colorado a little bit more, the link can also be found in the description. Otherwise, please do like, comment, and subscribe.